despite a vaccine now being distributed, Americans have been dealing with the financial fallout from this pandemic for almost a year. So is this new stimulus too little, too late? Join me now from Dallas, Texas, financial expert and co-founder and chief strategist of GDP Advisors, Seth Denson. Seth, what do you make of this? So I'm thinking if I'm a landlord and I have a bunch of apartments or a bunch of buildings where people rent from me, I would imagine like not all landlords have like tons of money just to wait until someone decides to pay them rent later down the road.
I think there's two parts to consider here. First, to what you're saying, Stephanie, which is I think that in many minds, especially in those that are trying to be conjured up by Democrats, all landlords are daddy warbucks sitting somewhere with their cash cases of money, making the common man suffer. That's just not the case. Many landlords are, middle class, upper middle class. They have mortgages on these properties already. They don't own them outright. And so this is a problem when you just simply put a moratorium without properly managing the funding structure. It just squeezes the balloon to one side. Now, the second part of this is what this moratorium does. It just kicks the can down the road. At the end of the day, this rent will still be due. And while this stimulus package did have some support, it's just scratching the surface.
Yeah, I think the description was Scrooge McDuck when he like dives into his money pool. That's how they make these landlords out to be. And I know a lot of people who don't have tons of extra money who do that for a living. And so it's like, I get it. But at the end of the day, you're right. This is kind of like kicking the can down the road, too, because, for example, the video that we just listened to of that man, he says, we're thousands of dollars behind. How will you ever save up enough money at this point unless you get like a new job and like a higher salary to make up for that? I've lived paycheck to paycheck. You don't just randomly get extra thousands of dollars later down the road. That's not how it works.
That's right. And so as we keep, because of the continued stranglehold on the economy, right, these people can't go back to work. They can't generate income. And again, we're now going to have this problem lingering deep into 2021, possibly into 2022. And it may be a problem that never gets resolved completely without ultimately evictions.
Okay, so maybe you can explain this to me, and I've noticed it because I've looked at some of the housing prices in my area. So the booming real estate market is a big surprise amid coronavirus pandemic. Why is that?
Well, people are coming to Texas, and they're specific to areas, I think, that are more hot markets where businesses and people are moving out of places like New York and even California and saying, we got to go someplace where our dollar can be stretched further. It's got a better political climate for us from a business perspective. Those are really where you're seeing this. But the second side of this is a shortage of inventory. In the construction world, construction crews were heavily hit by COVID early on, and many got far behind. Plus, combine that with supplier delays. All of this is playing into a seller's market. Finally, the final piece on this, mortgage interest rates. They're super low right now, so people are finding a way to take advantage of that, and some of them buying second and third homes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, I'm sure you've been keeping an eye on this too, but retailers and like malls, a lot of them have been struggling, and apparently JCPenney is closing more stores in 2021. This isn't just like a COVID trend. This has been happening for years. We've seen kind of like, they call them like the graveyard malls. It's pretty depressing how things have changed over the past 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I don't want to age myself, but growing up as a kid, we went to the mall, right? That's where you went and hung out. The market has changed, and unfortunately, many big box retailers haven't changed with it. JCPenney, for example, as you mentioned, and it's near and dear to my heart, their headquarters is probably 20 minutes from my home here in Texas. They closed 27 stores pre-pandemic, and so we're starting to see this trend. The big box retailers that did not adjust to the economic way of e-trade and how those things work, they're going the way of Blockbuster Video. That card isn't getting you much these days either.
Yeah, I think there's one Blockbuster Video store still open, unless it's closed since the last time I saw that story. I think it was a couple of years ago. Do you know if it's still open?
Last I heard it was, and God bless them. I mean, again, I mentioned my childhood.
Don't age yourself,
kind,
Seth. Don't age yourself.
Right?
Hold on, I'm gonna check and see if it's still open. Blockbuster store. I used to go there, so I'm not aging myself. I'm very young.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, it looks like it's still open. So
there you go.
Pretty interesting.
Good for them. God bless them.
Well, Seth, we're out of time. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.